Let me address my question to you, Carol. I do remember your presentation last year in Shanghai. Now I'm impressed with your second release. My question about your premonitions or expectations about logic of luxury release 3.0.
3.0, yeah. The question is, last year we did the logic of luxury. This is 2.0. What's next year? The next conference. Stephen has answered the question, I think, in talking about the future, as I did in my talk with the prophecy of projects that were already underway. I mean, Stephen was actually talking about projects that have not yet been released in the press officially, because I keep close track of these, because every single one is an endorsement of the analysis of the building type that I was trying to describe. So it's coming. It has come true. It's coming true. There will be more of them. They will be in areas that previously have not seen very tall buildings. But it's not height, it's slenderness, it's the absolute FAR and reconfiguring the space, because, and I like alliteration, and I wrote a book called Form Follows Finance, and this is, the logic of luxury is the corollary to that for residential buildings. And the thing is that that didn't used to be true in New York. It used to be location, location, location were the first three principles of real estate. Now in residential, it's views have value. So as long as you have great views, that drives the economics of the project, I think.
Do you want to add to that, Silvian or Stephen?
Yeah. What Carol said, it's absolutely correct. We have on board these days very, very slender buildings. One of them, as a matter of fact, it's a Russian architect. And the slenderness is 1 to 30. We are presently engineering it, and we may have an active damper, as Stephen mentioned. We are looking into that. And hey, I don't see a limit, really, because the technology is developing, and we try to pace with. We just answer to the demands of the market. Apparently, people like height. They are ready to pay for, and we are to deliver.
Yeah, if I could add, just, I think we've made some incredibly, incredible strides and pushed through a ceiling recently. What we're seeing now is we're trying to do that in other locales, right? So we just finished, I want to call it a super tall building, a tall building in Boston, one of the tallest residential buildings in Boston. Again, we're pushing through the 1,000-foot mark and the 1,100-foot mark in Miami, which, the next tallest building is only about 780 feet. So I think height sells, and as long as there's a market for it, we're going to continue to build it.
We will buy.
Can I answer the question again? Because this is what I was talking about, is the distinction between height and slenderness, right? And people, I gave this talk in Toronto and I gave it across Australia just this summer. And every place that I go, the developers say, we can't do that here. This is only in New York. This particular form is only in New York. You'll find tall buildings and thin buildings in other places, but it is the land values, as you suggested, the value of New York right now, the elevated land prices, the air rights prices, more than $500 a square foot for air, right? Does not exist anywhere in the world at the moment that you can build tall buildings. It exists in London, but you can't build tall buildings there. This is a unique form to New York that I think we should celebrate.
Yes, interesting. Well, it's one of those questions. What other cities have the skyline? I can't hear you. What other cities have the skyline that can support these super slenders, as well as the population and the economy?
Well, I think, so I mentioned Miami. Miami,
right.
A lot of what's driving the Miami market is very similar to what's driving the New York market. Tremendous amount of foreign investment. What's also interesting is a lot of buyers in the Miami market today are people who have been priced out of the New York market, right? So they expect a certain level,
Right.
and they're looking for height. And you know, we're doing buildings in downtown Miami proper that are becoming slender.
Right.
11 aspect ratio, 12 aspect ratio. And you know, you couple that with poor soils. And this is, again, this discussion about tall, what really is tall. But when you couple it with, you know, hurricane force winds and poor soils, it becomes that much more challenging to do a
Exactly.
building that's a 12-to-1 aspect ratio there than versus here.
Right, right.
Actually, in Miami, that we have also experienced, it's a unique case where the wind velocity, normal wind velocity, it's about 60% higher than whatever it's in New York. So Miami, it's a special product. What is interesting, though, and I have to mention, we did a building in Los Angeles that, you know, Los Angeles, we have some other issues like seismic environment. However, we check the wind also. We put that building in the wind tunnel, and I was questioning the developer. Now, the acceleration on a seismic mode is about 100 times larger than the wind. The wind is like dancing a valse as opposed to the brutal movement of the seismic acceleration. Nevertheless, that's the perception of the people. People will accept the brutal movement of the seismic forces. However, even in Los Angeles, when there is an earthquake, they ask, are you alive? Are you okay? Is the building still standing? These are the questions. However, when the light and pleasant wind is blowing and the building is dancing a little bit, they don't accept it. So it's a concept, what is going in our mind.
Yes.
In light of what you just mentioned regarding seismic, what is the limitation in your mind with respect to slender towers, say in California or other highly seismic regions? I mean, is there a limit to it in your mind? How thin and slender we can become?
Yeah, that's a good question, Ramin. I mean, we've worked on high-rise buildings in San Francisco together. I think that, you know, a lot of what we do and engage performance under wind is under significantly lower velocities, accelerations, and displacements. And I think when you look at under a design basis earthquake or the larger event, right, the killer event, you know, what if any second and third order effects have we not counted on yet? I don't necessarily know that there's going to be a height restriction. I mean, there's buildings now being done at 1,000 feet and beyond in California. So, you know, I think it's really just a question of pushing through those various sort of self-imposed barriers. But I think the evolution that we've seen here in New York and other places, I think you're going to see it on the West Coast as well.
Good, thank you.
Unfortunately, it's the same thing. Isn't New York sitting on a major fault line? Is this not an issue in New York?
Well,
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, isn't it New York City under the fault line? The answer is that the codes were revisited in 2008. We are in a seismic zone. It's a light one, relatively speaking. Yes, but we are checking. In particular, if you are talking about a low-rise building, then they could be very much subject to the seismic forces. But any building is being checked for.